Hey guys, this is Blue Forest. So today we're going to do a final review of the game. I did my first review about a week after the game came out with some initial impressions. And then I did a follow-up about a month later. But at this point, we've had the game for over 4 months. It came back to us in mid-May. And so we have a good sense of how the game works now, of what the grind is like, the resources we get, the rewards that we get, as well as a sense, at least, of what we can expect. And so I want to just give you some thoughts, some recommendations if you're an experienced player who might be hitting a wall, as well as if you're a newer player or a returning player wondering whether this game is worth it. Obviously, I can't answer that directly. That's up to you, but I can give you some things to think about. And one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video is because I do think that some players have begun to hit a wall, and we'll talk about that. And so, first of all, I do want to go over some benefits and advantages of the Netflix version. There are very important differences between the new and old versions of the game. Some are very good things, some not so much. I don't think it's wise to compare Kabam and Netflix as companies outright in terms of how they're handling things or did handle things. As you probably know, if you've watched my videos, I have no respect for Kabam as a company at all. But with that said, there are some things that are very good in this new version that I want to acknowledge. Okay, so Kabam is still working on the game. They do development, they provide support, but Netflix has acquired it. They're running the show. They're the boss. Okay, so I'll just go through a few things quickly. First of all, the fact that we have much more availability of SIGs, and this is true regardless of the glitch with the Sunday mission, is a very good thing. SIGs were far too rare in the old game. 5-star SIGs in particular were insanely difficult to come by. The fact that you can get your bots up to high SIG makes things more interesting and is helpful. The fact that you can get a lot of bot chips. We have these gauntlets where you can get millions of chips, as well as a lot of chips from things like the story mission. And AMs is also good because that means you can buy bots without too much difficulty. It does not take that long to be able to buy bots that you would like to purchase. I find that to be helpful and beneficial. In addition to that, the fact that the stores have been updated is generally speaking a good thing. Not all of them, but I particularly want to talk about the upgrade store because you can now buy any spark that you like. That's super helpful because even though you're going to want to do the grind to get sparks, acquire them naturally, you still have to buy some of them. And the fact that you can just go in here and buy any spark that you want just makes things a lot easier rather than having to rely only on grinding or, in the old game, potentially buying them for a lot of money, which was dumb. The fact that you can just go ahead and pick them up makes things easier. And even though a few of the sparks, like the alpha sparks and so forth, are pretty expensive, a lot of the sparks are not. And so it just gives you a way to be able to rank up bots more quickly, and I think that's a really good thing. There are other minor benefits which are helpful. The fact that you can now upgrade your mods all the way, which you could never do, right? Get your base in better shape. You couldn't do that in the Kabam days, you can now. And even though there are issues with the raid store, which I'll talk about, the fact that you can pick up relics quite easily without too much grinding is a good thing, and the fact that you can pick up the sparks to upgrade your mods pretty easily is also nice. So those are just some of the benefits. And I also just want to acknowledge the fact that we do have a new AM map. And that is really helpful because we were on the old map and the old game for several years. It was really fresh and nice to have this new map, especially considering that AMs are the most important part of the game. The map is also shorter, which is beneficial, but it's also harder, which I think is also beneficial. I would say the new map is harder than the old one. And so those are some of the benefits, and I also want to finally acknowledge that even though this has definitely been imperfect, I do want to give Netflix some credit for ensuring that some bugs and glitches have been fixed, and they have fixed a fair amount of them. They've definitely been too slow on some of them, but there are other bugs and glitches that have been around well before the Kabam game shut down that have been updated, right? So in the new version, there were issues with cores, issues with the gauntlets. They took a long time to fix the 4-star shards issue in AMs, but they did finally do it. They recently fixed the T5C issue. That also took too long, but they did it. And perhaps most importantly, they have done a series of updates and fixes to individual bots, which were long overdue, okay? And by the way, they also applied a few fixes to individual bots with the recent update, which came out last week. I do plan on doing a video on that soon once we do some more testing. But they have actually made a lot of fixes to specific bots, which I have to give them credit for. Again, there are more bugs, and they should definitely do some of these things more quickly, but they do deserve some credit for that. And so those are just some of the highlights, some of the benefits of playing in the new game. And obviously, even though you do have to have a Netflix subscription, the fact that there are no ads, no purchases, you can't be a whale anymore, the playing field is more even, all of those things are good. But I do want to address some of the downsides and the problems that we are now seeing more clearly now that we've had the game for a while. Because I have heard from several players in recent weeks that they are or have left the game, and I'm hearing more generally that we have now reached the point where people are beginning to either leave the game outright or take a break. This is happening even with very well-known people. Obviously, the most important example, the most obvious example would be iNightSkyz. Skies is gone. He's not an Omega anymore. He's not playing. Whether he's gone for good or he's just taking a break, I don't know. But he's not around anymore. And several of my friends, long-standing, very skilled players, have decided to let the game go. And I think that's for multiple reasons. But I think it primarily focuses on the issue of the lack of content in the game, particularly the lack of challenging content in the game, as well as the lack of direction for the game. And so I want to go over several suggestions for Netflix. If you actually bother to watch my stuff, please do take these considerations to heart. I doubt you're listening, but if you are, it'd be helpful for you to hear these things. And also, I just want to offer these downsides just so that newer players or returning players can be aware of them as you make decisions about how much you want to play this game. Because as we all know, this game can be kind of like a part-time job. It requires a lot of grinding. And so you only want to give your time to a game like this if you feel like the investment is going to be worth it. And so the first priority number one issue is the lack of communication from Netflix. They don't communicate at all in any way, ever, and that's a big problem. That needs to be resolved. Whether it's through a server, a forum, there's got to be some way for the player base to air their grievances as well as receive updates and announcements. Because even when they do something good, like bug fixes, they don't tell us. So that means it's left up to the player base. We have to find out things on our own and test bots on our own. That's annoying. It's time consuming. We shouldn't have to do it. Communication is key from a business perspective, from a customer service perspective. It's so essential because if they don't fix that, then the game will only continue to bleed players. You have to inspire confidence in the player base. And if you don't communicate, that cannot happen. That's super important. And related to that, we need a sense of the game's direction because we just don't know. We have no idea what's coming, okay? We don't know their plans for this game or their gaming division in general. All we can do is make inferences based upon things they have said. We do know that they have said that they have made further investments into their gaming division. They do want more of their subscribers to play their games. We do know, according to data that's not even that old, that upwards of 99% of Netflix subscribers have never played one of their games. They clearly want to change that. Whether we find out, whether that's going to be successful or not, we have no idea. But they have said that they are making further investments in their gaming division. Now, obviously, their gaming division will never be their most popular division, their most important division. It will never be their top priority. But if they seriously want more of their subscribers to play their games, they have to communicate. They have to allocate some resources to doing that. And like I said, we need some direction about what's actually coming to the game. So broadly speaking, that's priority number one. Communication, a sense of direction, a way to interact with them, even minimally, would be so beneficial and inspire more confidence. Related to that, number two, of course, is the lack of content, because we can see now, based upon what they've done, that there isn't a lot of content, period, okay? And the only new content that we're getting on a rolling basis, of course, is the story. That's it. And that is frustrating players, and I can understand why. So right now we are approaching the end of Act 4, and so that means that the remainder of the story will come out over the next 4 months or so if the schedule stays roughly the same, okay? And so that means that we're going to come to the end of Act 6, probably January, maybe February. So there's a few questions involved in that. Number one, is anything else going to come alongside of that? Number two, even more important, is anything going to come after that? Because if nothing comes after Act 6, I guarantee players will leave the game in droves. The story alone is not enough. And unfortunately, the story missions in the new version have basically become the equivalent of the time slides in the old version, right? We got the time slides every 2 weeks. It was pretty repetitive. And for the most part, they were the only content we got for a couple of years. If that's going to be the same this time around, that is not going to retain players very well. Okay, that's a very, very important thing. I think there also need to be augmentations to existing game modes. Okay, so when it comes to things like arenas, if you want players to play arenas, okay, you've got to give incentive to do so because they're boring and repetitive and they take time. Right now we only have 4 arenas. A couple of them have been nerfed. The SIG Arena, the Spark Arena, they can be worthwhile. Overlord's Favor, running right now, is an utter waste of time. Resource Bounty also is because they nerfed it. When it comes to raids, look, raids are always going to be boring and repetitive, but here's the thing with raids. We don't expect them to be difficult, and it is nice that you can upgrade your mods now, but if you want to incentivize players to do raids, then update the store. Because right now, right, it's only Sparks and Relics, that's it. And even though they don't need to go back to a rotating store, right, in the old game it would change every day somewhat, they don't have to do that, but give us more things we can buy in the store. Give us Sparks, give us kits, give us Energon, give us more things to actually want to raid for. Because if you already have the Relics and the Sparks, you're only going to raid if you need some ore, you can get that. Or if you want to go for the Dinobot Gauntlet, but that's going to take forever to get to 2,500 medals, and many players, including myself, do not have the time or the patience to do that. So updating the raid store would be a nice touch, for sure. And, just other game modes in general, like, gauntlets or time slides or something else to keep us occupied. Now, it's important when it comes to content to be realistic, and it's important to be realistic about everything. We're not going to get 10 more game modes. We're not going to get, 20 acts of the story. They're not going to release a dozen new gauntlets tomorrow. We don't need that, but we do need more than we're getting right now. And that leads to the next suggestion, which relates to challenging content. There is almost no challenging content in the game. Right now, the only challenging content is high-level AMs. That's it. All right? The story missions, by and large, are quite easy, even if you're not that experienced. If you have a few bots ranked up, you can get through those missions quite easily, and they're only a one-time deal. That's a problem. Related to that is the fact that we don't have any long-form content, and I mean specifically LOC-type content. The fact that we don't have any LOC-style missions is a major loss, and by the way, it's a major loss for everyone. It's a huge loss for experienced players because there's nothing difficult to do. But it's also a loss for mid-level and beginner players because the LOC missions in the old game were by far the best training ground and the best testing ground. They were great for testing out your bots when you rank them up or if you're using new bots, and they were the best way to get better at the game by far. There's no doubt about that. The LOC missions were the hardest content we had in the game outside of the highest level AMs. And the fact is that the best way to get better at a game like this is to do long, challenging content. We really need something like that. Again, we don't need a dozen LOC missions, but if they were to release a few of them gradually over time, new ones that are different than the old ones, that would be huge. It would be so exciting. Lots of players would eat that up. Players that weren't very experienced, who couldn't finish them at first, they could work towards them. It would be a new goal for people. That would be huge. So generally speaking, again, we don't need tons of new content, but we need some, and we certainly need more challenging content. And that leads, by the way, to the next priority, which is that we must have the return of revives and kits for AMs. That's a big problem because, like I said, the only challenging content we have are high-level AMs, which of course not everybody does. And the thing is that not having kits doesn't actually really make AMs harder. It makes them more limiting, and it makes them more limiting for everyone. So for top teams, you only have really two choices. You can do super high levels like D100 or so, but if you do that, you have to live with the fact that you're never going to finish the map because no team doing D100 or higher is finishing the map. And that means that your bots are stuck in AMs for 4 days. You're only fighting a few bots per day, which is really boring. Your only other option, if you're a very competitive high-level team, is to drop the level somewhat so that you can finish the map. Keep it challenging, but you got to drop it enough so that you actually can get through it. And that's helpful because you can fight more bots and you can explore and, it's just a little bit more fun. But you can't go as high as you would like to go without revives. The same thing is true for mid-level teams, lower-level teams. Nobody can be as competitive as they would like to be. Nobody can progress in AMs as much as they would like without revives and repair kits. Spending hundreds of energon for one kit is ridiculous, a total waste. And it makes no sense, by the way, that we don't have things like the Titan mission. That was a boring and repetitive mission, but at least you could grind for kits. So we need something like that. We need kits to be back in the raid store or the consumable store, something. We need a way to acquire kits by grinding or by buying them. It would make AMs much more interesting, more competitive, which again is super important considering that AMs are the most important part in the game. That is also very important. And one other thing that I want to mention, this isn't super important to me personally, but I know that a lot of people find this very important for understandable reasons, is the lack of bots, right? Now we are going to be continuing to get more bots through the story, right? We're getting more of the old bots back, so they're kind of new again. We're getting bots like Cyclo and Tronus and Necro and all of that, and that'll be fun, and people will be able to play with them again, and that's great. But beyond that, I don't think Dead End and Chromia are going to be enough, right? New bots are very exciting for players. They're interesting. They shake things up. And again, we don't need a dozen new bots, but even a few of them over the course of the next year or something would be fantastic if that's possible. And so, look, there are other things I could say. There are other suggestions I could make, but those are the series of issues that we're really dealing with, okay? Communication is number one. Lack of content is number two. Alongside that, lack of challenging content. Revives and kits and AMs. Bot availability. Things like that, as well as augmentation of other game modes like arenas and so forth. We need more. It does not have to be way more, and like I said, we have to be realistic here. We can't have an insane amount of content, but we do need more than we have, because if we don't get more content along with further communication, I guarantee a lot more players will leave. And so that is kind of where we end up on this. And the thing is without any sense of direction, look, we have no idea what's going to happen with this game. It could be around for 6 more months or 6 more years. All we can do is hope that it will be here for a while. Okay? By the way, if anybody tells you that they know what's going to happen with the game, because I see this sometimes, don't believe a word that they say. Don't believe some idiot on Discord. Remember, a lot of those people are kids who've never run a business or even had a job in their life. They have no idea what they're talking about. The fact is, we don't know. So we need some assurances, and we need some assurances sooner rather than later. Whether these things actually happen or not, on any level, I have no idea. Maybe they won't add anything else. Maybe it'll just be like this. But all we can do is try to make suggestions, like I'm trying to do now, and get on with it, right? Complaining, whining, bitching are not going to accomplish anything. All we can do is offer our feedback and let Netflix know that we believe in the game, the ones that still do, okay? And so if you are a new player, returning player, because the good news is we do have a fair amount of new players and returning players. Obviously, we don't have the data, we don't know the hard numbers, but I will tell you that just even through Discord and through, for example, my channel, because I am one of the few people who's still posting videos for this game somewhat regularly, there are people who are finding the game for the first time. And even just in the past few weeks, I had a few friends return from the old game. So people are still coming back, and that's a good thing. So if you're one of those people, or if you've been back but you're hitting a wall, all I can say is the game is still amazing. If you loved the game before, you'll still love it. The mechanics of the game, the speed, the fast-paced gameplay, the 3D gameplay, the fact that at least the challenging content is genuinely challenging, the fact that you can play with dozens of your favorite bots if you're a big Transformers fan like I am, the fact that there's still a fair amount of variety even though we would like more. All of those things are true. And even with some of the bugs that will probably never get fixed, like air punching and all of that, this game is still fantastic. It's still one of the best fighting games out there, period. And so there's still plenty to keep you engaged. The thing is, though, if you come back to the game now, the good news about that is that you can actually progress right away, because with the story missions, one nice touch is that there's an easy lane in every mission. So that means that less experienced players can get through it, at least complete it. So if you come back to the game now, you could get 5 stars very quickly. Now, obviously, it'll take time to actually buy a bunch of 5 stars and rank up your 5 stars, but you can make a lot of progression in this game very fast. And so if you are coming back to the game now, you'll probably be very excited at first, and that's the key. The question is what happens after a few months, and I think that we are finally hitting that point. I think it makes perfect sense that people are starting to get sick of things and get frustrated now, because the excitement and the novelty of the game coming back has now worn off. And that's a big deal. It's not exciting anymore. It was a total surprise when the game came back. We didn't expect this, but that has worn off now. And so even though there's enough to keep you engaged for a while, we're going to need more from Netflix if this game and their games in general are going to be successful. So like I said, I have no idea if that will happen. It might not, but all we can do is hope and provide feedback and suggestions along the way. I am still engaged with the game. I admit it's not as exciting as it was, say, a month ago. I will stick it out at least through the end of the story. You know, if there's nothing after that, I probably won't, but I am still around for now. I'll still keep playing. I still love the game. I'll still keep doing AMs. I will still keep creating content. But I am beginning to hit a bit of a wall, like I think a lot of people are. So if you are, all I can recommend is make suggestions, offer feedback where you can, and just do whatever you can to challenge yourself. You know, use bots you didn't use in the old game. I've started to do that. That's fun. You know, get into an alliance that's doing higher levels to make things more interesting. You know, you've got to kind of challenge yourself. You've got to get on with it. Like I said, complaining isn't going to help. You've got to make the most of this game, right? This game is about what you put into it, okay? So I'll leave it there for now, guys. Obviously, there's more I could say, but that's where we are with this game. There's a lot of good in it. There are a lot of outstanding problems, and so we just have to see what happens. And so I hope all of you are well. Do let me know if you have any questions, and we'll be in touch again soon. Take care.